Is Jack Daniel's bourbon or is it not bourbon? If you've ever looked at a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey, you'll see that it doesn't say bourbon anywhere on there, it says Tennessee whiskey. But a lot of people will argue that it really is a bourbon because it has to follow all the same rules, plus a couple of things. Well, here's my 2 cents. It's important to know that the only difference between a Tennessee whiskey and bourbon is 2 things. 1, it's made in Tennessee. And 2, it's filtered using the Lincoln County process, which runs the whiskey before it barrels over charcoal for mellowing. Charcoal mellowing has been around since about 1825, even before Jack Daniel's was established in 1875. The Tennessee House actually passed a bill defining Tennessee whiskey, and the North American Free Trade Agreement actually recognizes it, even though the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau does not in any way recognize Tennessee whiskey. They do, however, recognize the definition for bourbon. The 51% corn mash bill, aged in new charred oak barrels, and all the other rules that apply to bourbon have to apply to Tennessee whiskey as well. But those that want to argue will say that when you mellow the whiskey over the charcoal, it adds trace elements, and you're not allowed to add anything to bourbon besides the ingredients for the mash bill, so therefore it's not a bourbon. Well, I don't think that that's true. For one, if it was made in any other state besides Tennessee, it'd still be considered a bourbon. And I don't know if you could say the trace elements is adding something to the whiskey, and the biggest problem is the charcoal mellowing process happens before it gets barreled and before it would even be legally defined as a whiskey anyways. In my opinion, I don't know if you can count trace elements as something added to the bourbon, and it's probably such a minute amount that it doesn't really change much of anything, and the fact that the mellowing is done before it's even defined as a bourbon anyways leads me to decide that, yeah, Jack Daniel's is a bourbon, but it's also a Tennessee whiskey. You can be both, so there's my answer. Yes, Jack Daniel's is a bourbon, but it's also a Tennessee whiskey, which might be better or might not. That's a different discussion.